Yes, Amelia.
I learned how to better help my staff that I want to implement things.
Fantastic.
And sometimes I say that so when they're in the room, I can become accountable for it.
Oh, I thought you were just kind of like
Yeah.
getting people to say, hey, 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 that's my boss.
Maybe that too.
Maybe that's-
I said, oh, he claims me.
Hey.
You are well cared about.
So,
Sorry, I'm sometimes probably
in the event that you do not know who I am, I don't know how that would be possible, but I am Wes. I am the director of the Adult Life Program. I oversee Idaho Falls, Salmon, and Rexburg, and the developmental therapy that occurs in those 3 locations. So I have the privilege of supervising indirectly and directly some 36 individuals and 150 clients over those 3 locations. And it is always humbling to me to see us come together and learn new and better ways to strengthen our skills. I've only seen this presentation once, so we're going to be learning a lot together. It's a good thing that my degree is a BS degree. So, because we will definitely be learning a lot together. But as we go through this, I want everybody, it may not seem right at first how evident this can be or how applicable this can be to your specific jobs. But if you think about it and you process it, and we can discuss that as we go, it will be applicable to everybody in this room, job coaches and skills trainers alike. Okay? So what we're going to talk about today, let me see if I can get this to work.
It worked last class.
It worked last class.
But it was super slow to react. So then it became angry.
I think I just have to wake it up. Universal design for learning and teaching in diverse classes. Okay? We're going to pretend. I need to see about getting a remote control for this.
Would you like me to?
We're going to pretend that I am Noah King. And if I'm hiding back here, I'm really not hiding.
Do you want one of us to hit
Yeah,
the
do you want
button
to
to us?
If you don't mind.
just say Q when you're ready?
Universal design was first introduced as a way to include access into, okay, I'm not going to talk about that because I don't know what that means. So we're going to learn more. Universal design, though, is a way for us to all look at the environment in which we're teaching in and how to modify that for those participants that we're working with. So this is a video, Michael Nesmith, and he will do some explaining as to how this is supposed to look. Can everybody see it all right? We need to turn off some lights. Would you mind?
Still trying to figure
Nope.
Oh, wait a second. Is that the video?
For sure.
Is that the video?
It's like
It is the
a video of one video. Yeah. Okay, which file was it?
You might have to type it into Bluetooth.
Sorry.
Now I am hiding.
It's not like you guys can see what's going on.
I'm really up here. I'm dying right now.
Do you need me to get you a water?
No. I have coffee.
Water.
I have coffee. Water. I'm getting water. I'll have that discussion with anybody. Coffee is water. It's flavored water. 98% of this is water. I'm getting my daily intake of water. Okay, there, I've said my piece. Well, we talk about it all the time in some of our classes, right? Healthy choices, right? Yeah, water is water. Water is coffee, coffee is water. Yes, Chrissy, yes, there you go. Soda, 98% water. Remember that. So Glenn, we're having some technical difficulties. This may be the, okay.
As I'm in the midst of applying for rent.
This is a commercial. This guy doesn't mean anything by what he says. So don't clickbait him or anything. We're going to go to the next thing.
Hello. It's great to be here. You might be noticing that I have a female voice that's speaking for me right now. That's because my interpreter is a woman. If I could have picked anyone for tonight, I think it probably would have been a British man. Have you ever been in that situation? Maybe you're in a supermarket or you're walking down a hallway and you're walking towards a stranger coming the opposite direction. And you start that awkward dance where you're trying to pass them and you go to the right and they go to the right and you go to the left. You know how awkward that is? Have you ever been there? So suppose you were deaf, like I am, and you're going down the hallway and the person coming towards you is completely blind and you start the awkward dance. What would you do? Have you ever thought about that? How would you communicate? This happened to my friend. He's completely deaf and he was coming down the hallway and there was a blind person coming towards him and they started the awkward dance and the blind man began to talk. And my deaf friend, what was he gonna do? He couldn't hear. So his first intuition is to gesture, point to his ears and say, you know, I'm deaf, but obviously the blind man's not gonna see that. So his second intuition was to take out his phone and type in his notes. The blind man's not going to see that either. So the third thing he did was a little unusual. He grabbed the blind man's hand and he held it up to his ear and he shook his head no. And the blind man felt this and immediately understood. Oh, this guy's deaf. The awkward dance was over. They were able to just kind of share a laugh and pass each other. So let's change the story a little bit. What if my friend was himself, he was deaf, but this person wasn't blind at all. He could still see. Maybe he spoke a different language. If my friend decided to do the same thing, anyway, grab his hand, put it up to his ear and shake his head no, would that person still understand him? Probably. It might be a little awkward, but it'd be universally understood. This is what I do every day as a creative for Amazon and a designer. I make visuals on the front page of the world's largest online storefront. I solve these problems that have to be accessible to millions and millions of different kinds of people with different backgrounds. As a deaf person, I have to innovate solutions all the time. I do this in my everyday life. My communication medium changes with every interaction I have. Everything from a pitching an idea to a client, to going into a bar and simply ordering a beer. My communication style has to change. I'm constantly thinking about how to make a better solution. And sometimes my solutions are awkward. Like, for example, you see me signing with two hands right now, but then I have to stop to click. That's one example. But I would like to argue that everyone in this room has a disability, regardless of if it's permanent or temporary. It could be something as simple as being pregnant, having a broken arm, being older, or being a child. Everyone has to figure out a way to cope and navigate around their disability, and these solutions are worth sharing. One example would be my wife. She's hearing, and we visited Iceland a few years ago. She's an educator, and she wanted to take a tour of a school for the deaf. Now, neither of us can read or write Icelandic, and I can't speak Icelandic sign language. But being a native signer, I could understand much better than she could. And so I ended up interpreting for her for the first time in our entire relationship. Often I'm considered the disabled one, but in this situation, she was the one with the disability. So what is universal design anyway? There was a professor named Ron Mace who passed away a few years ago. He taught at the Center for Universal Design in North Carolina. And he said that universal design is the design of products and environments to be usable by all people to the greatest extent possible, without the need for any adaptation or specialized design. So humans interact with objects every day. And all these objects fall somewhere on the spectrum of universal design, from very universal to not at all. So let's use a doorknob as a common example. Doorknobs are not really usable by children. They struggle. People with arthritis struggle to use doorknobs. And this guy. So how can we improve on this design? Well, the door lever. It's a lot better. This guy can use it now. But think about people with wheelchairs. Have you ever seen them try to go through a door? It's horrible. It's really tough for them. Or parents with baby strollers. It's really difficult, not fully accessible. So to even improve upon the door design further, the automatic sliding door was invented. This is such a universal design, it doesn't leave anyone out, even animals can use it. One of my projects recently was to work on something to make it more universally accessible. Do you remember when Google Glass came out? It was so exciting a few years ago. Now, may it rest in peace. But I started thinking about how could I use that? How could I make that really awesome new technology beneficial for people like me? So I thought of my mother immediately. My mother is deaf and she loves going to movies. Often, movie theaters would release a movie with subtitles that were imposed on the screen, and that was a really exciting event. I don't know if you know this, but deaf options in a movie theater are really bleak, and you usually have to wear something like this. Can you imagine going on your first date looking like this? Yeah. So I thought, how can I make this better? I decided to get a file for a movie script and put it in an app so that you could have a timed app where you could press play and go into any movie theater and see the script on your Google Glass. No one had done that before, and I had to move pretty fast on it. And the biggest reward was not only realizing that it helps people like my mom or people like me, but also anyone can use it. Imagine if you go to a different country and you go into a movie theater, you want to watch a movie, you can watch it in your own language. Or you could even have an app become your own personal karaoke machine and have it play lyrics. That is the genius of universal design. When you achieve universal design, it snowballs to the point where people, even if you don't share the same disability, everyone benefits from it. Disability drives innovation. The existence of disability forces you to come up with new solutions. It does not impair you. All of us have a disability, regardless of if it's physical or cognitive, emotional, or even temporary. What is your solution? Share it with us. It's what unifies us as humans. Let's stop making that awkward dance so awkward. Thank you.
You have to go back to slideshow and then present from current slide. So the universal design for learning was defined by David H. Rose of the Harvard Graduate School of Education. And Dr. Rose, I have some notes here on Dr. Rose. It was a neuropsychologist and educator that taught.
You need the light on?
No, ma'am. This is, I'm pretending I'm Noah. So I'm reading Noah's handwriting. That is not a diss on Noah. Thanks. I didn't say I needed extra light, but I need some light, Sarah.
Didn't turn off all the lights.
He focused on students whose traditional schooling and its methods have marginalized, stigmatized, and excluded. And there's not a single individual any of us in this classroom work with that has not been has not been marginalized or discriminated against in some way. I could go on and on and on about the current educational system, but I won't. So I'm sorry if anybody in this room is seeking to get a degree in special education or education. I hope you see the truth in a few years when you get closer to graduating. He wanted to make sure that it also served, or he also served of the Medical and Educational Evaluation Center at North Shore Children's Hospital. He taught at a school in Peabody where the access technology was a set of stairs. So I'm assuming that that would probably mean that students with a wheelchair could not access many parts of the building. No, you're fine. You're fine. I'll try and go beep. Okay. Oh, yeah, some of us have been in school a long time ago and we had to follow along with the stories. And John was beep, and you have to turn the page, yes. Okay. How many of you go to any of the places that you visit and find out that the place is not accessible for the clients that you serve? I imagine there are some in Salmon. I know there are some in Idaho Falls. I know Idaho Falls is trying to improve. But many, many, many times we'll find out that the people that we are trying to help access the community are unable to do so because the buildings or the locations that they're at are truly inaccessible. Here in Idaho Falls, we have the Friendship Garden. What is it called? I don't remember the name of that park. Anybody remember? It's the one where we have the sister city in Japan. I'm sorry? Yeah, okay, it's a Friendship Garden. It's a beautiful garden. If you ever have an opportunity to go down there and walk through it, it's beautiful and it continues to improve all the time. But most of it is not accessible. There's a lot of dirt trails, there's a lot of, they're trying to make it much more accessible. But that, even 3 years ago, it was not as accessible as it is now. And when people would go there in a wheelchair or that had significant mobility issues, tried to go anywhere in that park, they were limited to the top tier or along the bridge where they could look down into it, just because it was so inaccessible. But universal design helps lead this direction, plus the ADA rules, helps lead into that direction to make things more accessible so that everybody can access those. So how does that work for us? Thoughts? Sarah?
I think one thing is that not everyone interacts with people with disabilities as often as you do. And so I think one way is that sometimes people don't necessarily realize or think about the fact of people with a disability might not be able to do this or might not be able to access it. Part of our job is literally to notice those things, is to think about, okay, how can I help them? How can they be independent? How can we do those things, but they can't necessarily be independent if situations like this where they physically do not have access to it. Part of our job is to notice those things. And I think one thing could simply just be pointing out to people, be like, hey, do you realize how inaccessible this would be if you were in a wheelchair? If you couldn't see, if you, whatever. It's just simply making sure that people know that, pointing it out, because not everyone interacts with people with disabilities as often as we do.
Okay. Anybody else? I agree. Part of our jobs, whether you're job coaches, whether you're skills trainers, DSs, whatever, part of our jobs is educating the public. When those opportunities arise and doing it in a professional way. Okay? Yes, Janelle.
When you approach somebody like that, I'm like, we know what works because we try things all the time. So if you have a solution, because them not being in that position, they might not know what to do. So if you have a solution, offer it as a suggestion.
Right. And there's a lot of times, and now I'm going to kind of stick up for businesses, there's a lot of times they don't necessarily do that because it's cost prohibitive. He brought up the sliding doors, in 90% of the places you go to anymore, right, have those sliding doors so people can get in and out of them. That's expensive. And for some businesses, that's very cost prohibitive. And so you have to temper what we do with what is feasible for a company. Because the ADA rule points out that a place only has to provide accommodations that are reasonable and do not cause a hardship to the company. And it's whether you're an employee or a customer, okay? So if it's beyond their financial capability to do, although there are probably many, many avenues that they could get finances, it's not necessarily something that they would end up having to do. Chelsea, were you going to say something?
They say the bowling alley built a ramp with like 5 lanes. So we're going to the plants, take pictures. So we could get on and off. Anyways.
Okay. UDL is not intended, this is perfect, to accommodate special students. Rather, the goal is to accommodate everybody, to allow access for everybody. It will increase access to learning. Go ahead. It'll reduce physical, cognitive, and organizational barriers to learning. And sometimes that's us as staff, because we get stuck in a rut, or we get stuck in, well, this, you should be able to do this, or whatever. Instead of examining, for those of you that were in the leadership course earlier today, Michaela said something that really resonates, and that is, how did she put it? Examine the problem. No, address the problem, not the person. So the person may not be able to, we shouldn't be, how am I trying to say this? Somebody help me. It's not
Shouldn't be labeling people because they don't understand something. Like, people may not understand, and it's for us to see it. Not kind of put ourselves in their shoes and explain in a way that they would understand.
Find a way to help them
Yeah,
understand.
instead of,
Find a way to help them.
I will say, when you're teaching a class, like when you use like small skills, training, I feel like it's really easy to address that person and the action or the attitude or whatever's happening in the moment. Right? It's really easy because you see them acting out and you're like, I want to address that. But then it's what you address in that moment. Like if you could pause that moment right then and there and look at what you're thinking, am I addressing what they're doing or am I addressing the behavior? Am I addressing the person or the behavior? Because if we address the person, we're going to tell them to like, stop, what's going on, is that appropriate right now? But if you're addressing why they're having that behavior, like why is that happening? Are they thinking something else? Are they not involved enough? Do I need to help them be, do I need to help them participate more so that their focus is more on what we're talking about instead of off wandering, causing them to be, causing a behavior.
Perfect.
A lot
Sarah,
of-
then, okay, Chanel, and then Sarah, sorry.
You're good.
A lot of times when we come upon things like that, we don't want to point out one person, but it's a good learning for everybody. So we address it as a group discussion and go things like that. So we're not singling out one person and everybody can learn from it.
Okay, Sarah.
Just kind of going back to the like businesses and whatever, the fact that sometimes like those things don't always have the ability to change something simply because of budget or whatever. I think it's also just important to, one of our biggest jobs as, at least that I think, as people who work with people with disabilities every day is to, because we understand that not having the budget to do a great thing that would be fantastic for our clients. We understand the concept and we understand the thing of, it would be really cool if we could have X, Y, Z, whatever, but that's not always a possibility. That's not always something that we can afford, that's not always something we can do. And so I think sometimes the intentions are good, but you need to make sure that your intentions and the plausibility work together. So even if, the sliding doors isn't an option, maybe you could think about, okay, well, is it possible maybe that you could have like a door stop next to the door? So that way when I have a client with a wheelchair, I can grab the door stop that's right next to the door so I can hold it open while they go through the door. Or just whatever, so it's a small, simple thing, but it's still able to help them feel more included and have more accessibility to places, rather than just like, okay, well, how the heck are we supposed to like help the client through the door and hold the door open and you don't have sense not. But I don't know, just sometimes those being understanding and also finding simple solutions and understanding their community.
Okay.
As a job coach with businesses, it all begins with education. Educating our managers and educating the business that we work with on where it starts, because how can we expect any sort of change without them understanding and educating them on the needs of our clients to begin with? Because there's no way that they can even, we can't start without educating them. And like she said, understanding too, we need to be very understanding with them. But yeah, that education, increasing their access to learning and educating them on the needs of our clients.
Right. If you have anything you want to add, Seth, you're more than welcome to. Okay. I'm just telling you, just because you're back there behind, secluded from everybody, wall off.
He likes it.
He probably really does, actually.
He's happy.
But one of the most important things is that the focus of UDL is not on fixing the person, because that's not our job. We're not here to fix, we shouldn't be trying to fix anyone. It's focusing on the issue at hand, whether it's a behavior, whether it's an access issue, whether it's learning a new skill, right? That's what we should be focusing on.
you can't fix anybody, but you can only fix how you approach the situation.
That's exactly right. That sums it up right there. Thanks, everybody, for coming to my TED Talk.
My name's Katie, I'll be here all day.
Yeah, we'll be here all week. That's the question.
Yeah.
Oh, it ends
It
today.
is today.
4:15, so yeah. Yeah, Chrissy? Oh, please say that louder.
I said that you can't fix the person, you can't fix anybody, but you can fix how you approach the situation or how you approach that person.
That's
How
really
you
all.
approach anybody is going to
ultimately will define how they coach, how they're gonna react back to you.
So how many individuals in here are job coaches? Okay. Well, I'm just making sure, because I know that for skills trainers, oftentimes these present much that they relate much easier. You know what I mean? But, stop fixing the word. Okay, we'll get to that in a second. But I just want to make sure, and I appreciate both of your comments, especially because it shows that you're in tune. And we like that. Okay, and you're already thinking about how to help it.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. What can we do for? I don't know your name, sir.
I'm Pierre.
Pierre. So can you give us your life history and then we'll move on to your question? I'm kidding. Yeah. So especially social security, date of birth, and all your passwords.
And your mother's maiden name.
I just have a different perspective on that one, bro. Like, as a job coach, I feel like no matter how much we tell our clients that, or it's just different, that like the world cannot be fixed overnight, or no matter how much we tell the world, like, hey, you need to do it, or it needs to be this, it needs to be that, like the world is unfair, unjust, unequal. You know what I mean? And like sometimes how I job coach my clients, it's not about them. You know, I don't want them to think, oh, I'm disabled. I have a learning disability. I am this, I'm that. I want to treat them as normal as possible, that even though they're not capable of doing this as like a normal person, that they will learn, that they can learn. You know what I mean? It's like it's changing their perspective that like if I want to be treated by the world, I need to treat the world the same. You know, like I'm not different. Like why would the world change because I'm disabled? You know what I mean? It's like for me, it's about overcoming the challenges, using the resources to overcome like what you're not. So I have this client that like basically he wanted to be a welder, but like he's scared all the time. And so like it's helping him like, hey, you want this, but you're working here. So what can we do? Like they can't pretty much like change the business setting, the business environment just for you. So you have to change yourself, change your perspective to be able to do what you want, to do what you can. You know, it's like it's different. Like coming from a different perspective, like I think it will help the client see the better picture or the full picture of how the world works. Because sometimes they don't have the cognitive reasoning as normal people do, like us. So I think if we have a good intention, like our motives are right, they will have the same access to learning as what we experience. You know, because like sometimes like this ability disabled them to learn because they kind of embrace that word that I am disabled. I have barriers, you know, like the world needs to change for me to enjoy life. And so sometimes we have to help them unlearn that thought.
So that's a job coaching perspective, and in the classroom setting, we have a client, he will let you do anything, but he can do it himself. But he doesn't have mobility of his hands very well. So we do the option of doing a multiple choice so that he can still do that independently. It's just giving him a different version to do than somebody else. So he still has his independence.
I'm sorry, I'm deaf. Can you just speak a little bit louder?
She's quiet too.
I said that, we have a client that he can do things for himself. If he would let you do it, because he wants you to do it.
Or
But
make
he's-
it seem like he can't handle it.
But like, for him to do it independently,
Not all.
he doesn't have a lot of mobility, but he can march me, so we change it and give him multiple choices. So that when he goes to figure out the answer, he has to know which one he thinks. And stuff. So he's still independent, but it's just different from everybody else. That's our solution.
That goes into fixing the learning environment.
Right, and that's what we're discussing, right? We're all talking about fixing the learning environment. And we will specifically address your comments in just a
So I
second.
think it's like what he said on the TikTok, like everyone in this room has a different type of disability, so it's feeling like everyone outside, like, well, I shouldn't say everyone, but overall, people don't really think of themselves or people around them as disabled. But if we, in the career that we're in, going out and realizing everybody has a disability and adapting to that to work with whoever, whether it's a business owner or a manager or wherever you're going, adapting to realize that they don't have the learning curve that we have because we're learning different things. So to be able to, like you said, educate them and approach it differently.
I'm Bethany from Rexburg. This just made me think of, like, I don't know if you read the book Anatomy of Peace, and focusing on not fixing the person, it talks about like a box mindset, how oftentimes we put ourselves in this box and we think the problem is a person, or like, oh, the situation is like this. And it goes on to all these different mindsets, and how, like, before you can influence the world around you or influence people, you first have to get out of that mindset and then build a relationship. And so I feel like when we're talking about, like, going out into the community and encouraging them to have these universal designs and doing that in our costume, we first have to change our mindsets and have relationships so we can actually say things and make a difference.
100%. But there again, that's making adjustments to the learning environment. You are part of that learning environment, right? As any one of us. And so that's a big part of that, is if we are in a specific box or mindset, I mean, you can see this all over the place today, whether it's politics or religion or whatever. You get a certain mindset and people can't get out of that. You have to stop and step out of that mindset before you can make changes, before you can truly make change. Amelia, are you raising your hand?
No.
Okay. I'm just making sure.
Thank you, I appreciate you trying to include me.
Yeah, well, speak up a little bit more and then I'll include you more.
Oh, that's
Yes,
not.
Sarah? See, these guys are all talking. Y'all are. Go ahead.
Don't shut up, she knows this.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I should have, oh crap, I forgot Sarah was in this class. Anyway,
Love you, Wes. I call you a highlighter today. So
highlighter shirt.
So I am dyslexic, so sometimes I'll look at it, I really hard to read. And something that my mom always told me, she said, Sarah, the world's not gonna just start writing books that make sense to your brain because words don't make sense to your brain. She said, you have to learn how to look at it and how to understand it in a way that you can. She's like, the world cannot always adapt to every single person and every single thing. It would be great. It would be great if we could, but it's not always possible. She said, you need to learn how you work, how your mind works. Learn to be independent and figure it out for you. I want to complete this task, and I can't necessarily do it the way everyone else does, but I can learn to do it this way that still accomplishes the task. It might just look slightly different than Anthony did, or whatever. It's, I don't know, for me, one of my biggest things with teaching a client to be independent is helping them understand, how do you need to do it? What does looking independent for you look like? Because for me, with my dyslexia, I took a lot of tutoring. I learned a lot. I had to literally at 14 years old go back to learning different vowel sounds together and what they were and what that meant. And literally relearning what words were. And then I could read. I love to read now. Hated it as a kid. Now I love to read because I understood what I needed to do to be able to understand. What I needed to be able to do to become independent in that way. The same kind of thing is that sometimes with our clients, the world can't change for every single thing. It would be really nice, but it's not always possible. So sometimes the way that we need to teach them is, how do you need to be independent? What way do you need to do this to still accomplish X, Y, or Z?
That comes to, well, we will get to that in a second, but it is impossible for the world to adjust to everybody's specific needs. If the world could do that, it would be complete anarchy and chaos. Because no people, okay, first of all, it keeps banging around in my head. When he talked about being pregnant was a disability, I don't necessarily agree with that. I had to throw that out there, sorry. I know it's completely off topic, but I don't know why people would think that anybody that is pregnant has a disability. Anyway, it is impossible for the world and everybody within the world to adjust to everybody else's needs. That's what you were talking about. We, including our clients, have to adjust. We have to. They have to adjust. We can assist that by changing the environment, but they have to adjust. And a lot of the problem is the vast majority of our individuals that we serve have been treated as can't do instead of can do their entire lives. So when they have that can't do mindset, it's much harder for them to overcome those things. It's much harder for them to be able to even express how they think independence looks for them, or how they can adjust to be more successful. And so then that's when we come to providing opportunities to help them see those. Go ahead with the next one. The UDL is an educational framework that guides the development of flexible learning environments, spaces, and I'm going to continue to say that we're part of that space, that accommodate individual learning differences. And a set of principles that help educators, thank you, I wasn't quite done reading. It's okay, no worries, no worries. Develop instruction that meets the diverse needs of all learners. Go ahead. Okay, this is going to start talking about what you brought up and what I kind of mentioned. Inequality, equity, justice, and equality. Okay? Having access to something doesn't necessarily mean that it's provided equity. Okay? Equal does not mean just. We have to offer tools that will help achieve equity and justice. Okay? Equity is custom tools that identify and address inequality, right? But true justice is picking the system to offer equal access, both tools and opportunities, to both tools and opportunities. So obviously the tree is leaning one way, so one person gets an apple much easier. This person has more apples on this tree or this side of the tree, so they can't reach as many, or they get more. Anyway, I hope you can all see that, right? My point is with this, again, it's impossible for the world to accommodate everybody. So we have to learn to adjust and teach others to adjust. But we have to provide tools. And so when you hear people start screaming about equity and equality, equity is a much better term than equality, right? Because equity means opportunity, equality means everybody's treated exactly the same, and that will never, ever happen. But justice means that we all get the tools that we need to achieve the success that we want. And therein lies our role, is to provide the clients the tools. Go ahead. UDL guidelines. So you have to provide multiple means of engagement, which with access provides recruiting interest to optimize individual choice and autonomy, optimize the relevance, value, and authenticity of whatever it is you're teaching, and minimize threats and distractions. Sustaining effort and persistence is to heighten salience of goals and objectives. And if we have any questions, we'll discuss them. Vary demands and resources to optimize challenge. foster collaboration and community. There's that education of the community part. Increase mastery of oriented feedback. Mastery-oriented feedback, got it. And promote expectations and beliefs that optimize motivation for self-regulation. This is a really tough one for our individuals to learn, self-regulation. Facilitate personal coping skills and strategies, and to develop self-assessment and reflection. How many times do we work with a client? Because that self-reflection one is the hard part. It's hard for some of us to do self-reflection. But how many of our clients say, well, that machine made me do it, or that machine, it's that machine's fault. Instead of, I wasn't operating it properly. I pushed the wrong button. It's the machine that screwed up the ice cream. So that's why McDonald's is shut down for now. Yeah, whatever. So, okay. Provide multiple means of representation. Offer ways of customizing the display of information. So in the job setting, this is all of those different operational charts that they have on all the machinery or whatever they're doing, right? But in our rooms, it's all of the things that we can put in our rooms, stating expectations, stating whatever information that we're trying to present, right? Just like in a regular classroom, in a school classroom. Okay, offer alternatives for auditory information and offer alternatives for visual information. Again, changing the environment to help the clients learn differently. Clarify vocabulary and symbols. Because it's not just dyslexia that people have a hard time understanding those, right? So we have to help them understand what words mean and what different symbols mean. Clarify syntax and structure. Support decoding of text, mathematical notation, and symbols. Okay, so how many of us are going to be teaching that? Yeah, none of us. So math, don't worry about math, ever. Promote understanding across languages, because math sucks.
Yes, I agree.
Yes, I don't care if it is the language of the universe, it sucks. Illustrate through multiple media. So one of the things that we're doing in Idaho Falls is we're going to be, and they're starting to do in Rexburg, is we're going to be moving to a team teaching model in the classes. And one of the things that I'm encouraging, and you guys can do this in Salmon, you already do it for a large part of your day because you're all together, right? But looking at the classes in a more long-term learning style or situation, instead of we're going to talk about safety signs today, and tomorrow we're going to talk about safety in crossing the road. We're going to talk about safety signs for the next month and a half. And we're going to do different projects. We're going to do different activities. We're going to watch different videos on how that works and what they represent in real time or real life. Does that make sense? But the more media, the more different types of media you use, the more individuals you will reach in your classroom or in your job setting. Okay? So words don't always work. Mine definitely are not working today. Activate or supply background knowledge. You've got personal experience, that always helps tie in whatever you're learning to the clients. It makes it more relevant, especially if you can tie it into their personal experiences. Highlight patterns, critical features, big ideas, and relationships. Pull it all together, make it all important. Guide information, processing, and visualization. Guide people through the learning process. Talk to them, discuss it, find out what they're lacking, help improve that. Maximize transfer and generalization. For job coaching, that might be working on them at McDonald's, right? but they should be able to take all of those work skills that they learned at McDonald's and use them as a custodian. Maybe not the equipment, because those aren't necessarily transferable, but all the skill sets necessary in the job. In the classroom, it's taking that, being able to interrupt a conversation appropriately and using it across the board, not just in my class, but in my choice, in the community, at home, in church, or wherever they may go.
Exactly, things that they utilize at home. For example, a client that works at McDonald's who sweeps the floors, we have conversations with them. Do you do this at home?
Right.
Do you sweep at home?
And you do, right, and it's
Okay,
the
well,
same at
let's all
home,
have-
right?
It's the same that you do at home.
Exactly.
Same motion that
See,
you do at
and-
home, let's sweep.
Generalization is, that is our true purpose, is generalizing all of those skills, because if they can use them at home or in the community, not just when we're telling them when to do it, or showing them when to do it, then they're really learning. Sarah?
A floor is a floor.
That's right.
I'm kind of gonna back up a little bit, because my brain. Sorry, not sorry.
You don't have to be sorry.
When we were kind of talking about how the client, how to teach them information, whatever. Something that kind of came to my mind was, it's great if we know how each of our clients learn and how to teach them, but it's even better if they know how they learn. What do I need? So if they're at a job and they're like, okay, can you do this, and they go through it really fast. If that client knows, hey, I do better seeing it. Can you show me? Can you show me how to do that? Or I do better doing repetition. Can we do that exact thing 14 times in a row so that way I can get it down packed? Like, it's kind of along with my similar thing that I was saying earlier, is that we can't be there every minute. We can't help them in every single situation, every single interaction. But kind of what Wes was saying earlier is that applying it across the board. Okay, you now know how you learn. So now talk to your boss. Tell him, hey, I want to learn this new skill, or you're trying to teach me this skill, but just telling me that doesn't work, it doesn't connect in my brain. I need you to do this. It's giving, I don't know, at least this way my brain's connecting it. It's, our job is to give them the tools to do it themselves, to advocate for themselves, to say, thank you for trying to tell me, but my brain doesn't understand that way. I need you to show me. I need you to repeat it. I need to physically do it. Whatever it is. Helping them know how they need to do something. Helping them know how to.
Yeah, I agree. That's part of our job as job coaches, is to help them learn to communicate with their management team and with their coworkers as well, to communicate how they learn and how they need to, establish that independence as well, and how to communicate and stand up for themselves and say, that's not how I learn, or it would be better if you help me this way, instead of just showing me what I learned this way. That is part of our job as job coaches.
Teach them more advocacy.
Is to help them advocate for themselves. Like, I can advocate for you now, but let's help you learn how to advocate for yourself. Like, I will stand there with you. I will be there with you while you say that to them.
Yeah, like
Let's
You
go.
want to voice it.
Yes, because they need to learn how to have their own voices. And I am happy to be your voice today. Let me show you how it's done today, but tomorrow you're gonna be your voice. Does that make sense?
It's also like holding them accountable for their own. It's like holding them accountable also for their own growth.
It is, yeah.
Essentially too.
So like you said, they might have to do it over and over and over again. I'm happy to show you how to do it today, but then we're gonna change their environment. So I'll show you today how to do it by speaking up for you. But tomorrow, we're changing your environment and you're gonna do it. So we're fixing that, and you're going to do it. You might feel uncomfortable, and it might not be exactly how you want it to be done, and you might be like, oh, that was rough, but I'm here for you. I'm gonna stand right next to you. You're gonna do it, and then after we'll celebrate. We'll be like, yeah, that was awesome. You did it. And then we'll continue on with your job. Does that make sense?
No, my biggest is I'm a sales trainer, and a lot of my clients, they'll tell me, oh, I wasn't okay with that, I wasn't comfortable with that, that bugged me, I'm like, okay, why didn't you tell them that? You're
Yeah.
telling me that, but like, why didn't you go tell your boss? Why didn't you go
Exactly.
tell the other client? Why didn't you go, whoever? I'm like,
Go to the source.
I can't fix their behavior, that's your job.
Exactly.
You have to go tell them, so that they understand, and fix something if they don't know.
And then like somebody else was saying earlier, I think it was you, about like having a group kind of lesson on it, that way you're not necessarily calling out one person in front of everybody too, but making it a group thing.
They usually just know who they are because.
Oh yeah, we're always like, so I'm not gonna say names, but, and then we'll just.
In our situation, most
Everybody
of them
knows.
know exactly.
So on a one-on-one,
That's a different conversation about.
Well, I'll tell you, it's rare that you're in a group of clients and you're talking about something generally, but everybody knows who you're actually trying to address.
Yeah. My favorite is something that is applicable to everybody in the room, but there are specific that screams, hello.
And everybody,
my
yeah,
favorite.
they don't even have to do that, it's just known, it's just known. I'm
So,
not gonna say any names, but.
yep, you had made a comment that I think is really important for everybody to remember as well, and that is, I'm gonna paraphrase it and it's slightly different, but nobody learns in a comfortable place. You don't learn when you're comfortable.
Uncomfortable.
I learned
we're
something
going
every
outside that
day.
comfort zone every day, and
And
that's okay, but I'm gonna be right next to you while we do
For
it.
support, that we're gotta be accountable for your own growth.
Right.
Uncomfortable. What's support?
I mean, do we learn from success or do we learn from failure? You learn from failure. Oh, that didn't work, so I need to try it a different way.
Because if you succeeded immediately, you're like, oh, then I know how to do that.
Right.
But if you have to fall, but it was Thomas Edison failed so many times before you learned to like, oh.
Right.
Like, you have to fall down to get back up.
It's such a cliche thing to say. We were just talking about that yesterday.
What?
White Edison, the
He
Thomas
was actually
Edison.
more of a,
Yeah, we won't get into all the historical drama about
My
that.
favorite thing to say to my clients when they feel like, just down on themselves because it didn't work out the way that they wanted it to is, I say, you know what? Everybody makes mistakes, that's okay. The only thing we can do is just learn from it and try again tomorrow. It's not a big deal. Let's keep going. That's it.
That's right.
Just learn from, well, just. keep
Okay,
it.
Seth, you have something to say?
failures are evidence of trying.
Perfect.
Did everybody hear that? Failures are evidence of trying.
I know.
Write that down. Some pearls of wisdom.
So there was
Wisdom
a
of pearls,
sign,
huh?
there was a sign in one of the classrooms yesterday, actually, because it was a computer lab. I typed it down, so I'm gonna go home and I'm gonna find it, I'm gonna print it out. But if it doesn't challenge you, it won't change you. That was probably,
Right.
I can't hear.
Oh, speak up a little bit, Sherry.
so when I was in the computer lab yesterday, just kind of looking at all of your guys' beautiful things, I found a sign that said if it doesn't challenge you, it won't change you. And I think that.
Okay. So again, we come back to the UDL as a mindset. Looking at the issue at hand and not necessarily the person, and how can we change that? Go ahead. Beep. It gives all students an equal, see, there's that term again, opportunity to succeed, offers flexibility in the way students access material. We should be providing equity and justice in opportunities to succeed. Okay, provide all the tools necessary. Engage with it and show what they know. Go ahead. Representation, yeah, because I don't know what's coming next yet. Again, offering more than one format. Find ways to provide text, audio, video, hands-on.
Yeah, those are the ways of learning. There's 4 different ways that people learn.
And if you can incorporate every single one of these into every one of your lessons, everybody in your class will be learning. Sometimes this one and this one are the harder ones. I mean, we hand out worksheets, right? But how many really get that? This one can be harder. A lot of us try to do this. But how often do we combine all of that into a single class? Yes, were you gonna say something, Janelle?
I just gonna kind of give an example. Over half of our clients cannot read very well, if at all, or write. So I had talked to Rachel because I thought, they could be completely independent and we do not have to help them one-on-one if they could do this. And I researched stuff, and there's a pen that you can scan the words and it will read that to them. And we have Wi-Fi headphones, so we're working on that. And that is a way they can be independent.
I actually have one of those pens here as well.
We got one, but it wasn't working, so we're trying, she sent it back and it's
Waiting
for different one.
And there are different things similar to that, yeah?
I just had a thought that like it's also important to know that our client's background, like I'm not sure, but like us job coaches have access to their history, their like medical conditions, things like that. And so if we know their like what they're going through, we can actually like play around how we can help them learn, because like we can further understand them, like like
And you can, because we've done that in Salmon. We have access to all of their books, and we had certain clients that did things a certain way, and you wonder, why
did they do it?
But then when you read the history, it's like, that's why.
Every person in this room should have access to every client that they serve in their permanent files and that paperwork. Yes, Maddie?
I was gonna say, I just got a client this week and he is, he's not very verbal. You can't really understand what he's saying. And I made these, this was before I got like his med social and inventory needs and stuff. But I made flashcards for him to figure out different sign language things that he could do, because he doesn't even speak sign language, And reading into his med social, found out that he can't read and he can't say things. So, I mean, if you guys have ideas.
We do lots
Because
and lots of visuals.
We do.
Yeah, well, I have pictures and stuff, but I'm just trying to figure out exactly what he's saying, because he'll repeat words to me, and I'm like, he doesn't know how to spell. And so I'm like, I don't know what you're saying, and he doesn't know sign language, so it's kind of a learning curve.
Absolutely.
And we have a
Yeah.
client that says something, she has said it for all the time I've ever known her, and I've worked there for 10 years. She hasn't been there that long, but she says this one phrase over and over. One of these days, we're gonna know what it is, but we have not figured it. She says it all the time.
Our parents can't even tell us what
Yeah.
it is. It's just.
And
It's
they've
like,
known her
she
all their
knows.
lives. It is,
But, sorry.
go ahead.
A lot of times, if we're not sure what some are saying or trying to communicate, we'll ask the other clients because they've been around them a lot. And they'll see or hear something that it's like, yeah, you're right.
There's one client that corrects me all the time out. I'll be like, oh yeah, that's cool, because I think I know what the one said. And the other was like, no, this is what she was.
And then you ask her and she said, yeah.
Yeah.
Or she'll tell you no.
I think a lot of times, as we're going over this, I just keep thinking, putting yourself in your client's shoes or that person's shoes as, how would you feel or how would you want to be approached as learning something and you're not understanding it a certain way? How would you kind of putting yourself there, or seeing, like, taking your own disability or whatever it is into, okay, well, this is what I struggle with. Would I appreciate somebody coming at me like that, or
I think I've
being
learned
more
more
understanding?
being in this field from the clients themselves. I mean,
Yes.
than being anywhere else.
Sarah?
They can teach
You're
most of
gonna
my
say
classes
something?
for me, and
So, I had a cousin that had a call syndrome, something that we did with him, and it was really hard for him to communicate, because he couldn't really communicate all that well. And so we would do, picture and physical association. So we would like get a picture of an apple and then show an apple, be like, this is this. Or, you know, whatever, and so then they have all those pictures, they have all those things like a folder, and then they can physically be like, this is what I want, this is what I'm trying to tell you, of words and food or locations, whatever, of being able to be like, okay, this location or this food or this whatever, it is the same thing. So that way they can associate it and they're able to communicate a little bit better. We had a client that was with us for a while that couldn't really communicate, but they had a bunch of pictures on an iPad, and they'd be like, I want this, or I'm feeling upset, or I want to speak to this person, and they literally have a picture of that person on their iPad. So that might help. It's just doing like a physical thing and association of this image and this.
And if you know things that, particular things, you can go and find pictures, because we've done that, put a book together like that we can give out, and they can just have it. And just like
Communicate and have them for schedules and stuff.
because we found out that's where you find a lot of the behaviors, because lack of communication causes lots of behaviors.
And he has,
That's from
a short
frustration.
temper, so I just get, because he hasn't had tempers here, but that's like in his past, he gets really frustrated, you know, and so I don't want him to. Yeah, and so.
He did really well introducing himself.
The last staff training day, well, one of them, we had to do that, and we had a client that was very hard, difficult, couldn't communicate, so guess who's got stuck with that disability? And we had to do that disability during staff training day. So if I wanted to get some attention, he would always bang on the table, so you better believe. And it puts you into how they feel, and it is frustrating.
I'm going to tell you right now, I appreciate everybody's input and comments, because it's helped me as well as muddle through this. But I think it's provided us all some insight. And I especially appreciate the fact that you guys were able to, I mean, just immediately, boom, this is how this works in work. This is how this works at the work site. Because like I said, it's easy many times for skills trainers to adapt this stuff and just to automatically grasp an idea like this and run with it. But and not against you guys, but I've run into job coaches in the past where that's been much more difficult for them to grasp something like this. But you guys are just naturals. So,
I struggle really hard because.
yeah, well, you're all just awesome. That's all there is.
As a job coach, I have a really hard time not doing forward to show instead of having them show me
Right.
what they're capable of before I give them clues. I have a hard time not going, okay, well, watch how I did this. And then I'm like, wait a minute.
Well, that whole prompt hierarchy thing and that whole movement through that is a whole nother set of, I mean, we could go on for that for an entire 2.5, 3 hours, easy. But finding out ways like Sarah was pointing out, which one was it that was talking about having the pictures and the word associated with Sarah? That would be a really good way to help him. I had him yesterday in a class for 2 hours, and having a conversation with him was delightful and painful at the same time.
Very
Not because
expressional.
he's not a great guy. He's funny, but it's just his words are so, he doesn't mumble, but none of his communication is clear.
He uses a lot of body language, I noticed. If
Yeah,
you
he
can
does.
learn his body language, you got him now.
I think there were 3 words I got out of that entire conversation, that entire time. That was Apple, Mom, and Dad.
He knows how to whistle.
So, and it's not, and I've been doing this for 20 years. So, and I don't know how to help him get, communicate with us better. So anyway, I hope some of Sarah's ideas help.
I think a lot of this is, as people that were working with them out in the community is looking for not just for opportunities for them to learn, but also opportunities for ourselves to learn how to be better with the next client or with the next business or wherever we are at is learning as well, so we can be better to help them.
Always better.
It's-
So, I'm just gonna end on this slide. I don't know how many more slides are left, but we've only got a few minutes left. Giving more than one way for learners to interact with the material. I mean, we've said this in several slides. To show what they've learned. So it's not just about presenting, but allow them to present back to you what they've learned in different manners and different ways. And let them choose how that is. Okay. Again, I really want to thank all of you for all of your input and your thoughts, because I think that contributed far more to this conversation and this lesson than my understanding of the slides at this point. Not that this is not a well put together presentation. It's just, but I believe, first of all, that all of you do this far more often than you think you do. I think you're already all engaged to some level in a universal design of learning, right? Because every one of you in this room recognizes that the people that we serve don't always do things the same way everybody else that we normally know does. And so just that initial recognition and then being able to help other people in the community see that and understand that and know for a fact that just because you sit next to somebody with Down syndrome or autism, you're not going to catch it.
Well, that's kind of a thing up there that people are like,
Oh,
you're an addict,
you've
your
never
mind's
experienced
fine.
that, Sarah? I'm going to end this with a little story that I have from many years ago. I worked in Blackfoot, and we took a group to Boise for Special Olympics. And on the way back, we stopped in Twin Falls for lunch after 3 days in Boise for the regional state games. There were 15 of us or so, a couple of chaperones and all of the clients, right? All the Special Olympians. And a family came in and was shown where to sit next to us, and the look of distaste on the father's face, and immediately saying, we are not sitting by those people. That happens in today's day and age. That is a much more common experience and occurrence for the people who we serve than you would imagine. Now, they may not run into that as often in some locations because everybody knows everybody, right? But there's still places in Salmon where they won't hire people with disabilities. They just flatly refuse. But that's that mindset. That's that whole issue of why we need to educate people, why we need to help them understand that having a disability is really it's a word. It's really just a word. It's a word that we use, and that's exactly right. They're just people. But that kind of thing happens all the time, and it's disheartening. Okay, somebody was going to say something? Okay. Thanks, everybody. I hope you have a good rest of the afternoon. Be honest in your rating. Don't give me 5s. Yes, because I need to learn. I am far from perfect. Well, you guys are the ones that need it. I mean, I ask questions that you guys get. And I tell my staff all the time, you only get out of anything that you put in here. So if you're gonna sit there and not participate, you're not gonna get anything out of it. Yep. I appreciate you guys. Thank you very
I used to be a trainer for really marketing firm.
Right.
So I specialize in what I used to do. Data analysis.